where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly.
Hello, this is the first of a 5-part video series produced by the American Political Party, TAP for short. It's primarily intended for Americans whose home is Hawaii, but members of all other factions are equally welcome. I mean, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, progressives, capitalists, socialists, communists, Marxists, Maoists, and all the other ismists. I mean, I call them that because the only difference between them is the story they tell people to talk them into letting the government put its boot on their neck. Because once the boot's down, there isn't a bucket of warm spits difference between the lot of them. And let's see, there's the people that the progressives have talked into self-segregating into one of the color-coded boxes of their mosaic model for the United States. And I guess finally, to be fair, I should include members of religions who reject Western civilization's foundational principle of separation of church and state. Because under their religion, state only exists to be the enforcement arm for church. And who knows, with a little luck and skill, I might be able to persuade some of them that we're all the same, and to see others as opponents, not enemies, and especially to not use factions as an excuse to set aside all principles and do whatever it takes, no matter how dirty, to win government's power to put down the other factions. But no matter, my name's George Barish, and it's my job to present TAP's case for the following 4 assertions. I'll just list them now and return in more detail later. The first assertion is that it's way past time to begin ending America's rule by a sick old Democrat, Republican-only political monopoly. One that's polarized itself beyond any recovery, and to do it before they permanently polarize the rest of America. The second assertion is that Hawaii needs to fill the void left by Hawaii's Republican Party leaders who've recklessly, almost comically, driven their party into the Grand Canyon of all ditches and made it permanently irrelevant. And by so doing, put Hawaii in the hands of one-party rule with absolutely none of the checks and balances that America's founders warned us were all that stood between us and old world tyranny. The third assertion is that Hawaii's 2018 election offers a once-in-a-lifetime chance for Hawaii to lead the nation in beginning the end of its rule by the sick old Democrat, Republican-only monopoly, and to begin filling the void left by the Hawaii Republican Party. So TAP's hope is that just this one time, Hawaii will lead the nation in change. Instead of forever running after one mainland movement after another, shouting, "Hey, wait for us, wait for us." Just this one time, stop earning the unkind but maybe not incorrect label that volcanic ash put on us, which was attention whores. And just this one time, lead the mainland, not follow it. And finally, the fourth assertion is that the only way to begin filling that void and to begin ending America's rule by that sick old Democrat, Republican-only monopoly is by replacing the failures, not by trying to reform them. We can no more reform them back to health than America's founders could have reformed the old monarchy into America. There are times when the only solution is just clean the slate and start over. One last housekeeping item before we get started. Talk is cheap, and America's already drowning in social media's ocean of NATO talkers. I mean, NATO standing for no action, talk only. So there's no need for one more. Therefore, TAP is committed to actually doing something specific, measurable, and achievable. But that first requires that we exist. Because the Tea Party's fatal mistake was never submitting to the discipline that's imposed by formal existence. I mean, 1 minute the Tea Party existed, a 3-minute television rant later, or 1 minute it didn't exist, 3-minute televised rant later, and it existed as a sea of emotions, but no clear definition. Or a movement awash in emotion, but no clear definition. And that freed everyone and anyone who had political ambitions to claim that the Tea Party stood for anything and everything they wanted it to. Which, of course, left voters no way to know what it stood for from one politician to the next, or even from day to day. And in turn, that made it easy for the Republicans to tuck it under its smothering wing, where, well, they smothered it. It also helps to remember that there's no law against lying to get elected or reelected. Nor can there be, or should there ever be one. And that means an honorable political party is the only way to hold candidates to the promises they made to get elected after they're elected. That's because power is predictably and irresistibly addictive. And staying elected requires the money, manpower, and resources only a party can assemble. Therefore, a party's ability to continue it, withdraw it, or redirect it to an opponent is a powerful weapon it could use to hold its candidates to the promises they made after they're elected. I know today's monopoly parties are so committed to their lust for the raw power that comes with simple majority rule. They no longer do that. A good example being Hawaii's Republican Party, that Governor Lingle talked into discontinuing a member-approved platform that binds their candidates to anything, which makes its candidates better described as do-your-own-thing politicians than candidates of the party. But that doesn't make their failures the new normal, or mean that a new party that power hasn't had decades and centuries to corrupt yet couldn't be different. And actually, I think it's the reverse. I think it means that only a new party that power hasn't yet had a chance to corrupt has a chance of being more honest and honorable in today's sick old Democrat, Republican-only monopoly. A political monopoly that really has held too much power. I mean, it's more power than America's founders dreamed we would ever be foolish enough to let the government have. And they've held it for too darn long in too few hands, till it can no longer be reformed back to health any more than the founders could have reformed the sick old monarchy into America. Okay, back to TAP's 4 assertions, starting with the reasons why it asserts Hawaii's Republican Party has made itself irrelevant. And this table says it all. It shows Hawaii's 86 most influential public offices classified by the occupants who hold it, by the occupants' affiliation. First, the governor's office. Democrats have it, Republicans don't. And they haven't occupied it for a long time. I mean, even if you believe Linda Lingle was a Republican, and not just a liberal that Democrats didn't want when she first came to Hawaii as a child of a rich family to hang out and serve. And before she went into politics and never came out. I mean, then there are the 5 mayor's offices. Democrats occupy all of them, Republicans none. Next are the 4 congressional seats. Same story, Democrats occupy all of them, Republicans none. Even more damning, it's been a long time since Republicans have been able to field a candidate, a credible candidate to challenge any office in any of Congress's elections. I mean, quick, name the Republicans who ran for Congress in the last election. Or heck, name the ones that are running in this election. I can't. And finally, there are not finally, but then there's the 25 state Senate offices. Once again, Democrats occupy them all, Republicans occupy none. Although it's a bit ironic that given their total rout in the Senate, Democrats can never again claim to pass any bill with bipartisan support. There just aren't any Republicans left to sell it to them. Finally, we get to the 51 state House seats. There we at least find 5 Republicans, or people who say they're Republicans, but really seem more honestly classified as do-your-own-thing politicians. I mean, ever since Governor Lingle talked the party into abandoning any kind of platform that's binding on their candidates, there's no core set of principles, any of them, or policies, any of them are bound to follow. So no one knows for sure from one candidate or from one office holder to the next, and from one day to the next, what they stand for. That's it. 5 out of 86 important offices, barely 6%, is really irrelevant in anyone's book. And having sunk that low, and now even losing seats between elections, Hawaii's GOP is just too far any rational tipping point to believe it can ever right itself. Unless, of course, you believe that modern-day Italy is just the ancient Roman Empire in a down cycle, waiting to return. Which tap doesn't? Do you? Okay, if you're willing to help, here's how. If you're a registered voter in Hawaii, your no cost, no commitment, no effort signature is all the help TAP needs. But just remember, no mighty pen has ever accomplished anything unless and until someone else picks up a sword and fights for it. I mean, the ideas and the ideals that became America were forged over centuries by the greatest minds, from ancient Greeks through the Dark Ages, through the Renaissance, the Age of Reasoning, Age of Enlightenment. But if America's founders hadn't picked up a sword and fought to make a place for them in the real world, America would still just be interesting table talk. But it would be talk around a table in a world where the free world lost World War II. But luckily, America is still a place where winning elections is all the sword you need to fix a political problem. And all TAP needs to pick up that sword is your signature. Unfortunately, we're now allowed to collect signatures online. So if you're willing to help us, please contact TAP at the email address on the board, and we'll arrange to meet and pick it up. And if that doesn't work, just let us know what is convenient, and we'll get someone to meet with you and pick it up, because every signature counts. And if you're not registered in Hawaii, you can still help. I mean, liking this video and signing up to follow it helps a lot. And of course, money always helps. In this case, to pay people to go out and collect signatures here in Hawaii. TAP can't accept money over the internet. So if you're willing to help in that way, again, please contact TAP at the email address on the screen. And TAP will send the details of how to transfer it safely and how TAP will guarantee it's used as promised. So that's it. TAP's willing to put its toe on the line and either deliver on its promise or fail in embarrassment. How about you? Helping TAP costs you nothing, commits you to nothing. So unless you're willing to try something else, why not help TAP exist to see what it can do for Hawaii? Okay, one specific is worth 1,000 glittering generalities. So maybe I'll stick in one specific TAP policy here before resuming a more general discussion of TAP's foundational principles. And one of my favorite is TAP's demand that the government stop using the U.S. Census to legally require Americans to self-segregate. Because that's what the U.S. Census does. First, it demands we choose an ancestry, heritage, culture, or any of the other dishonest euphemisms bureaucrats use to hide the fact that what they're really asking for is your bloodline. Then it limits our legal choices to ones that are not available to everybody. Every legal choice is reserved for some subgroup of Americans. And there's no choice, nor has there ever been, one that's legally available to all. So TAP's solution is simple. Just add American as a legally permitted choice, which doesn't exist right now. It would then be the first and only choice ever defined by the U.S. Census that was equally open to all and denied to none. It would be the only choice that honors the foundational principles laid down by the Declaration that called America to life, whereas all of today's choices dishonor it. It's a clear, specific, unambiguous demand. It's simple to implement. One new choice, 8 extra characters. It takes absolutely nothing away from anybody because everyone is still free to self-segregate in return for the free money that's tied to every other current choice. And it would cost taxpayers nothing because unlike all other choices, it doesn't entitle people to free taxpayer money or to benefits that other people don't get. I mean, the Constitution didn't authorize this question in the census. Politicians just stuck it in there to help them divvy up the money they've set aside in the hope of using it to buy votes from the special groups it benefits. And finally, please note how different it is for a policy to be clear, no cost, and not take anything away from anyone when compared with the policies of the Big Tent political monopolies. I mean, because what Big Tent strategy really means is promise whatever it takes to anyone who'll take it in return for their vote, in the hope of buying enough votes to eke out one more ungovernable, polarizing 50-50 coin flip election win. So naturally, it can't have no cost, or there'd be no money with which to buy votes. And for the same reason, their policies have to take stuff away from someone and give it to someone else. And of course, to get the biggest bang for the buck, it has to be ambiguous so that more people will think they're getting stuff than actually will. Nonetheless, for TAP, the only reason for making this proposal is because it's simply wrong for government to use its unlimited power to legally force Americans into self-segregation. And this policy would end it. Okay, because TAP made this video for Americans whose home is Hawaii, I guess a good thing to do next is explain exactly what's meant by the words American, the American people, and American exceptionalism. Starting with American exceptionalism, because everything flows from that. It's simple, really. When America's founders created a new government, new type of government for a new nation, they also created a new type of people. The American people, who are defined by a common set of shareable principles, instead of by an exclusionary bloodline, like all old world peoples always were. I mean, Germans, Africans, Chinese, all of them. And that never happened before, ever, which of course makes it exceptional. There's an easy way to visualize the enormous difference. Think of every U.S. citizen you know. In America, all of us could stand up together and say, "We Americans," and it would seem normal, wouldn't it? Now imagine if all of our ancestors had gone to anywhere else but America. And imagine us standing up and saying, "We Africans, we Chinese, we Germans, we French, we anything." Some of us would always be laughed at, if not attacked. Except maybe if we all stood up and said, "We Irish" on St. Paddy's Day, because everybody's Irish on St. Paddy's Day. I mean, that's why the old world called America the Great Experiment. Because until America proved it wrong, everyone believed that a people had to be defined by a bloodline or the nation would fall apart. Regardless, Abraham Lincoln said it far more eloquently in his 4th of July speech, known as the Electric Cord speech. So please look it up at the link shown on the screen. And read the paragraph where he talks about America's electric cord. And if you want to find the principles that forever define American and the American people, they're in the first 100 or so words that introduce the declaration that called America to life, as written by the 56 men who signed it, which also makes them the only 56 people entitled to say what they are. The principles are stated in the first 100 or so words that begin the Declaration of America's freedom from the English monarchy. They begin with, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." They declare we're all born equal, which of course would have been impossible if American people were defined by a bloodline instead of shareable principles. And then declared that our rights are individually endowed in each of us by the creator of the universe, which is what makes them unalienable and unchangeable. I mean, if our rights came from a constitution that was written by men, it would mean politicians are free to change them whenever they want to. Anyway, please look up and read those 100 or so words. They are the principles TAP has pledged to honor and with which every TAP policy will be consistent. Okay, unfortunately, I need to stop here for a minute to mention that lots of pundits, progressives, professional educators, and politicians like to lie about what exceptionalism means to discredit Americans who believe in it. And they do so using a cheap rhetorical trick known as the straw man argument. Simply put, first you lie about what someone else means, then you pretend to kick the stuffing out of your own lie, and then claim that proves you're superior to them. In this case, the lie they tell is that American exceptionalism means that every American believes she or he is individually superior to everyone else in the world, which, given that we believe we're all born equal, is a stupid lie. But political wonks like to use the straw man argument a lot, so it's good to know what it is when you see it. Anyway, at some point, some viewers might already have noted the inconsistency between, or the problem of having U.S. citizenship being defined by law, which doesn't provide for a choice, and defining American in terms of shared principles, which is a choice. That's an important and complex question that isn't faced by peoples who are defined by the bloodline, because they have no choice. TAP will deal with that in more detail later, but for now, just note that we make a distinction between U.S. citizen by law and being an American by choice. I mean, it's a lot like saying something like, all eagles have wings, but not all animals with wings are eagles. Okay, it seems the next thing I should point out is that while Americans don't claim to be individually superior to anyone else, no one denies that together they've achieved success for the United States. Economic, freedom, health, safety, and many other benefits that are exceptional. I mean, seriously, that's why America is flooded with immigrants, while so many Mexican citizens are desperate to flee it. It's also why no progressive who swore they would leave the country if President Trump was elected have really left yet. I know that like old world snobs like to tell us we're really just half-breeds, not real people, not a real people. I mean, so in their minds, we're always half this and half that, but never American. Doubt that? Okay. Why is it that they like to say that Africans who immigrate to America then become African Americans? But they really get apoplectic if you tell them that has to mean that Americans who immigrate to Africa should be called American Africans, and that we should say that their children are half American and half African. Because, I mean, it's really funny to watch their mental gymnastics when they try and work their way out of that inconsistency. Regardless, back to my real point. The exceptional success that the United States has enjoyed is a result of the exceptional unity that the American people's exceptional definition makes possible. So maybe a quick comparison between the melting pot, which was the greatest United States generation's metaphor for America, for the United States, and the old world mosaic. That's the model into which progressives, the president they elected, professional educators, and others tell us we should fundamentally transform the United States back into. I mean, mosaics are separate little colored boxes or tiles stuck together with brittle grout, easily shattered back into their little pieces, which in human terms means warring factions. Whereas a melting pot is the fiery crucible metallurgists use to forge two different base metals into one superior alloy, which will never shatter back into its parts again. The mosaic model assigns infants at birth without their consent to one of their little color-coded boxes of the mosaic. Then they prohibit the child from leaving by verbally, if not physically, disparaging and attacking any who dare to try. And the third one is the mosaic also prohibits any wrong-colored friend from joining them in their box. America's melting pot does none of that. It leaves every infant to grow up and decide for her or himself what she or he wants to be. The mosaic keeps us looking backwards to separate past, which, if you think about it, is the only way to keep 400-year-old hatreds alive in 4-year-old children. America, melting pot, points us forward to a common shared future together. The mosaic freezes and preserves everything about a past culture, the good and the bad, and especially old reasons for hatred. But the melting pot, when a melting pot forges a new alloy, it keeps the best characteristics of each part, and it expels the rest of it as slag. Okay, to close out this point, let me leave you with two fun questions. First, what are the two issues most important to Hispanics, or to blacks, or to women, or to any group? Did you come up with a list? Because if you did, it means you agree with the mosaic builders that everyone they assign to the same box has to have the same goals and be the same person or same people. Or did you ask which one? Because you agree everyone is entitled to define himself by their own actions and not required to be like everyone else in the box the progressives put them in. All right, here's the second one that's even more fun. Suppose a young woman or man the progressives put in their brown box. Grow up, look around, and then they come and tell you, you know, I'd really rather be, I don't know, a Lithuanian. How would you react? Would you feel compelled to convince them that they are wrong because they're supposed to stay in the box in which they're put? Or would you respond with something like, oh, okay, that's cool. How come? Because you respect their right to pursue their own choice of happiness, their own goals, and their own definition. Your answers will tell you a lot about how you view the rest of your fellow citizens. Okay, that's it. If you believe America needs fixing, then please help TAP exist so we can prove that we can begin fixing it or fail on our own merits. If you think it needs fixing, but you still defend the status quo, just ask yourself this. I mean, do you really believe that America is supposed to be ruled by exactly and only one Democrat and one Republican party until our sun burns out in 5 billion years? And of course, don't forget, the Dems and Gops didn't always exist. They just replaced the parties that came before them. Now it's their turn. Finally, if you just know that no new party can ever be different from the old ones, well, there's only one way to prove that. And to prove you're not just a complainer who uses that as your excuse for not doing anything yourself. Help TAP exist so we can prove you're right by failing. But if I were you, I wouldn't bet on it. Okay, time's up for this video. Now that the groundwork's laid, future videos can focus on TAP's specific policies for how to address Hawaii's many serious problems. And there are many. I mean, there's the exploding 3-part homeless problem, a failed prison system, a desperate need for land reform to address Hawaii's dangerously concentrated land ownership that's created a new feudal-like system in Hawaii, a new land-based feudal system in Hawaii. And a way to address the really godlike question of when does the life of an individual woman with her own unalienable rights become 2 lives, each of which has their own unalienable rights. And something far more intelligent than the ugly, false dichotomy that claims you have to be either pro-life or pro-choice. And a need for someone to lead a more intelligent debate over how to reconcile the fear of violence with these simple but brutal facts. No armed society lives or has ever lived under government tyranny, while every society that lives or has ever lived under government tyranny has been disarmed. There's also a need to confront, the real fundamental question facing America, which is the fact that a system that offers exactly and only 2 choices, like America's rule by a Democrat-Republican-only monopoly, guarantees polarization because, in truth, that is the definition of a polarized system. A system that offers exactly and only 2 choices, plus, minus, north, south, whatever. So the question is not, why is America becoming polarized? The real question is, how the heck did America avoid it for so long? And many more policies and problems that you'll find interesting. Here's hoping you'll join us. I promise TAP will offer alternatives and approaches you will not hear anywhere else. But our time's running out. Hawaii's once-in-a-lifetime chance to lead the mainland in beginning an end to America's rule by a sick old Democrat-Republican-only monopoly, and to begin filling the void left by the Hawaii's Republican Party that's driven itself into the Grand Canyon of all ditches, ends at 4 p.m. on March 5th. By then, TAP will exist to start trying to fill that void and end that monopoly. Or it will join the Tea Party that never was one, I guess, by never being one. So here's hoping to see you on the other side of that window with TAP and 749 other voters, and not stuck on this side of the window in today's polarized and polarizing status quo. It's worth a try. TAP needs your help. It doesn't ask for anything except your signature, so we can try. So I hope you'll help us. Thank you.
What I tell everyone, I was born by God's dear grace in an extraordinary place where the stars and stripes